What is up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Thanks so much for being here today. Of course, on Wednesday, we had joint practices between the Packers and the Bengals. Unfortunately, I'm an idiot and decided not to go to the Packers-Bengals practice. I could have gone. There would have been some logistical things I would have needed to figure out, but I'm sorry right now that I let you guys down and didn't go to that. I certainly had the real FOMO effect and was certainly missing out. And I was, hanging on everyone's tweets, and they of course allowed 7-on-7s to be videotaped on the day. So it was definitely a disappointment for me that I made the decision. But either way, obviously, like I said, I was keeping track of everything from home and just hanging on everyone's tweets that were out there. So I'm going to be going over all the different things that happened. I do want to be very clear. Once again, I was not at practice. So unlike every other day where I'm giving you exactly what I saw at practice, this is sort of an accumulation of information of what we learned from that specific practice, obviously from guys like Bill Huber, Matt Schneiderman, Wes Hodkiewicz, and a couple of the Bengals beat writers as well that were tweeting out. Also, Pro Football Focus happened to be at the practice, and they were tweeting things out as well. So I have you covered for everything that I was able to take away. Also, Bill Huber and Matt Schneiderman have great articles on everything that happened in practice as well. I definitely recommend you checking those out over on SI and The Athletic respectively. But that's enough about that. Let's jump in right away. First and foremost, we did have one player return from injury, and that was Josiah DeGuara. He did return from his calf injury. Now, he was limited. He did not do team activities, but still great to see Josiah back. Anytime it's a calf injury, as we saw with a player on the other side of the field, specifically Joe Burrow, have a major calf injury, you just don't know what type of injury time frame that's going to be. So the fact that DeGuara was back so quickly, even if it's just individual drills, is a great sign, and hopefully he is back in team drills sooner rather than later. I would not expect him to practice or to play in the preseason game on Friday. Rashawn Gary also practiced again on Wednesday. Now, they did have walkthroughs Tuesday that were not open to media or public, but basically it was Monday and then kind of day off and then Wednesday. So we don't know if he's ready to do back-to-back practices yet. And then, of course, Thursday will be off. Friday will be the preseason game. Saturday will be off, and so on and so forth. But I still think that's another great sign for Rashawn that he was able to go back-to-back days that were open to the media, specifically Monday and Wednesday. Again, just individual stuff. It sounds like he was doing a lot of wind sprints and just trying to get himself back into game shape, I'm sure, a little bit. But great to see Gary back at practice as well. Meanwhile, only 4 players that were not practicing with the team. That includes Eric Stokes, Lou Nichols, Innis Gaines, and Jake Hansen. All had been previous injuries, so no new injury notes. David Bakhtiari also back again with the team, so that was a great sign as well. Some lineup news and notes. Zach Tom was at right tackle once again, and it does seem like that is likely his spot. Josh Myers was at center, Bakhtiari at left tackle, Yash rotated in at left tackle. I've sort of mentioned this, and a million things could change between now and the start of the regular season. If I were betting today, I do think Bakhtiari, Jenkins, Josh Myers, John Runyon Jr., and Zach Tom are your starting 5 left to right. Meanwhile, it sounds like Samori Toure was behind Jaden Reed on the vast majority of slot snaps with the number 1, so that was interesting. Jonathan Owens remained at safety, and Jair once again did not do a lot of I don't think any of the team activities, and it was Carrington Valentine taking his place once again. More on him in just a moment. The first thing that I want to go over from the actual practice standpoint is the fight that took place at practice. And the immediate thing that I tweeted out about the fight was, 'twas inevitable. Of course it was. Of course there was going to be a fight. It was just a matter of how bad was the fight? Did it continue? Did it derail practice? Did anyone get hurt? Those were the big questions, but of course there was going to be a fight. Anytime you get 2 teams together, and this is the first time that they're going to see another team across from them in a practice setting, it's just inevitable. There's going to be a ruckus of some sort. This seemed like a pretty decent brouhaha, and it sounded like, I don't even need to get into the logistics of all of it. I don't really care, to be honest. I don't care who was at fault. It doesn't matter to me. I know Elton Jenkins seemingly was more of the, not the aggressor the first time around. Like, he was the guy reacting to things. And then on the second time around, it sounds like he was the more of the instigator and the one that ultimately was maybe to blame on the secondary portion. I don't care. Ultimately, he was kicked out of practice. I don't care. What I want to talk about here is what I talked about yesterday. I talked about a team that has been, maybe not the most tough team in the world. Remember, last year, right? Two coaches, Robert Saleh and Dan Campbell, basically went out of their way to say, like, hey, we can out-tough this Green Bay Packer team. Robert Saleh said, hey, if we keep leaning on the Packers, they're eventually going to fold. And Dan Campbell had similar regards to the Packers at the end of last year. Toughness has been a little bit of an issue at times. And I wanted to see in the first practice of the year, and I mentioned it in my episode yesterday about how Green Bay plays in this preseason, I want to see the level of physicality, the level of toughness that this team plays with. Because, in an effort to keep everyone healthy and safe, it's not always the most physical practices. That doesn't mean they're not intense. That doesn't mean they're not productive. That doesn't mean that they're not great. It just means that's not the focus, is the intensity and the physicality. In fact, one of the things that Matt LaFleur preaches the most is taking care of one another, which is a good thing. And I talked about it yesterday, and I'm not going to go too much more deeper into it today. But there's no perfect answer to this. You do have to figure out if you want to save your players or practice with a little bit more physicality. But I did want to come out and see what Green Bay would do from a physicality and toughness standpoint. And the fact that, you've got the skirmishes, and like, it just shows me in some extent, and I would prefer that it happens out in the field, but you can't in a practice setting because it's not like there's live tackling or hitting in this joint practice anyway. So when something like this happens, the fact that Elton Jenkins wasn't going to back down and his teammates had him back and it continued a little bit, I'm counting that as a win. And I will say, I would probably prefer there's just no fights, if I'm being honest. Like, I would prefer they just play football. But if there's going to be some stuff that goes on, I want to see the Packers live up to that and rise to that. And they did. And I'm cool with that. This is a combat sport. All right, it just is. It's a physical sport. It's a combat sport. It's a sport that a lot of guys get injured from. I don't wish injury upon anyone, but this is a physical combat sport, and you have to be ready to match that. And Green Bay was in the joint practice. And like I said, I would prefer there's no fights, but if there is, I want to see them rise to it, and they did, and I will take that as a win from that practice. All right, enough about the fight. I don't care about the fight most importantly, but if there is going to be one, I'm glad they handled it the way they did. Meanwhile, Carrington Valentine, I don't know how much more we're going to talk about this guy. Per Wes Hodkiewicz, and he talked about it in his 3 things following practice, and I think he tweeted out about it as well. 2 more pass breakups against the Bengals in red zone. Like, this guy is making plays consistently and constantly. He has already moved up the depth chart past guys like Keandre Thomas and Corey Ballantyne and, Shamar Jean-Charles and everyone else that was in front of him, not named Jair or basically Rasul Douglas on the outside at this point. He is the number 3 outside corner. Now, when Stokes comes back, I'm sure that he's going to have something to say about that, but he has been nothing short of fantastic. And of course, the question was going to be, all right, let's see him do it against another team. And apparently, again, per Wes and per all reports, he had another really nice day with a couple pass breakups in red zone. And I just don't know what else he's going to have to do. Of course, he would have liked to have had the pick the other day instead of the ball going through his hands. There's going to be some rookie moments, but I'm telling you right now, I cannot wait to watch him in the preseason game. I am so excited about Carrington Valentine, and he has lived up to the hype that we saw in OTAs and mini camps, and now in training camp, now in joint practice. It wouldn't, surprise or shock me either if he lived up to that in the preseason and whatever opportunity he gets in the regular season as well. Meanwhile, per Larry McCarron, who also in the Packers 3 things in his report, his version of it, he went over Tucker Kraft and said that this was Tucker Kraft's best practice. And remember, he's coming off a very nice family night. I thought he had a nice day of practice back on Monday. And now, per Larry, he had one of his better days as well as both a blocker and a pass catcher. So he is starting to stack success as well, which this rookie class, very, very intriguing. There's some things that are certainly going to be growing pains, but man, Luke Musgrave, Carrington Valentine, Tucker Kraft, Jaden Reed. We're going to talk about Lucas Van Ness a little bit. In fact, screw it. Let's talk about Lucas Van Ness right now. The Bengals beat writers were actually really impressed with Lucas Van Ness. Apparently he won on a couple different occasions. It was Joe Goodberry from the Bengals beat who mentioned that Lucas Van Ness had one of the best days. He was watching the Bengals #1 offense versus the Packers #1 defense and mentioned that Van Ness flashed on a couple different occasions, and a couple of the Packer beat guys as well were right on Van Ness and said that he had one of his best days. So he is coming along nicely as well. He had a couple really nice run stops this past week also. So he continues to put together good practice as well. So this rookie class continues to flash, their potential. I almost said continues to flash themselves. I don't think we want to go in that direction, but they continue to flash potential. What that equates to come regular season time, again, will remain to be seen, but great to see that Carrington Valentine, Tucker Kraft, Lucas Van Ness had great days. I didn't even talk about Carl Brooks. I didn't see anything from Carl Brooks on this particular day, but he's been, dominating every single day at practice too. So really fun rookie class. Meanwhile, Jordan Love, per Bill Huber, Rob Domofsky, and Matt Schneidman, was 17 of 29 on the day in 11 on 11 drills, including 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. And this is going to sound almost like every single other day that we've basically talked about Jordan Love. He had a deep completion down the field to Henry Pearson, which sounds like it was a really nice completion. Then he had Romeo Doubs deep down the field, and Jordan missed that throw. He had a pick 6 to Mike Hilton. Now, go watch that play. And Jordan talked about it after practice as well. So it's a read option, or a run pass option. So you can hand to the running back, or you can hit the bubble screen to the outside. And he had a 3-on-4 to the outside. And on this specific play, probably should have handed it off. So this is a misread pre-snap for Jordan Love. Once he decides to throw, the interception isn't like a, man, he really put that ball into harm's way sort of thing. It was a bad read pre-snap. And why I say that is, so once you fake the handoff, it has to come out quick to that bubble screen. You're basically faking the handoff, eyes up, ball out. You're certainly not expecting Mike Hilton to be the one that's waiting for the pass, right? So he can't. Now maybe like you could have had a split second late reaction where you see Hilton, then you just ground it and you just, whatever. But you're making that quick reaction play to get it out to him quick. And like I said, you're certainly not expecting a corner to be there ready to take the bubble screen. That was an execution problem up front, but it did start with Jordan making the incorrect read up front and not handing the ball off and instead trying to take the bubble screen with disadvantageous numbers on that side, which he readily admitted to and said he's going to learn from, which I fully believe that he will. And that's exactly the play and the situation where you want him to learn is in a practice like that. And I will say this, from pre-snap reads and when to hand off and when to throw, I've seen 0 issues up until this point for Jordan. So you might look at it and say, man, he threw another interception that it resulted in a pick 6. That's his second one this week. Yes. And ultimately it does. And Jordan would be the first to tell you it starts and ends with him. And I did see this play on Twitter, so I can talk about this one with a little bit more level of expertise, and not just me reading what other people said. But on that specific play, needs to be a handoff. And if it's not, then he's going to throw it quick to the bubble screen. I don't like there's no decision making there post snap. So not one that I think he put in harm's way or anything like that. He just needs to make a better read pre-snap, and he's going to do that, and he has done that all camp long. And like I said, I think he's definitely going to learn from that. So that was that throw. Then he had a couple red zone touchdowns, which is great. He had a beautiful 50-yard touchdown pass to Romeo Doubs, which Romeo Doubs was getting open all day. One play Jordan missed him. One play he hit him for the 50-yard touchdown. Another, which we're going to talk about in just a second here, and again, we'll talk about it right now. He had a perfect deep ball to Romeo Doubs at the end of practice that Doubs dropped for a potential touchdown. He also had one that he missed Luke Musgrave over the middle, where Musgrave was open with some separation and Jordan Love threw a little bit high. When I continue to talk to you guys about a offense that is super talented, that has a lot of really fun pieces, but has a complete lack of experience and is going to be extremely volatile, this is exactly what I'm talking about. And there is a reason why we're talking about Jordan Love completing about 55% of his passes with some incredible throws, some incredible plays from his receivers, some missed throws, some interceptions, etc. It's because this is going to take time to get on the same page and to be in rhythm together. And how many days, and we had a text message thread with the writers from Packer Report. And I honestly, there was usually we talk in Twitter so I can see the names. I don't actually know which phone number it was. It was either Zach Jacobson or Jake Stack, Jake Morley, Jacob Westendorf. It was one of those guys. And they basically said, and they're 1,000,000% right, Like every single practice is Jordan Love had wide receiver X wide open and Love just missed it. And then the next one is Jordan Love had X wide receiver wide open and Love threw a perfect ball, but the receiver dropped it. And then the third one is Jordan Love hit X wide receiver perfectly in stride. It was the greatest throw. It was an amazing throw, and everyone is celebrating. And that's been basically the formula for Green Bay on offense so far. Wide receiver open, Love just misses. Wide receiver open, perfect pass, drop. Wide receiver open, Love hits, beautiful completion, and we all celebrate. That's been the formula. And that is what I talk about when I say there is just youth and inexperience and just inconsistency on this offense. And to be crystal clear, this is something I talked about before training camp even started of exactly what to expect, not just in training camp, not just in preseason, but this regular season. They're going to face harder defenses who are game planning against this offense, who know what to take away, who know how to confuse and frustrate Jordan Love. We're going to throw the kitchen sink at this offense, and they're going to have to know how to respond with very few NFL reps to know what to do in these situations and scenarios. These defensive coordinators are going to give these young players fits, but these young players are going to learn from it and they're going to get better as the season goes along. And I would expect these things to have solutions and a better process and a better rhythm as the course of the season goes along. That should be the expectation. Now, if I'm talking to you here in week 15 of the season and these exact same things are happening, then we have a different conversation, right? But this is going to be a work in progress, and I expect the days that we've seen in training camp and the day that we saw against Cincinnati, yes, it's just practice. Yes, Allen Iverson, we talking about practice, but I expect to see a lot of these same situations and issues come regular season with a lot of the wow plays mixed in from some wide receivers that have legit 4.3 40 speed, are legitimate playmakers, from a quarterback who can do everything out on the field. It's just going to take time to gel together for all these young players. So not surprised by the day. However, I will say this, Bill Huber's player of the day, and you can check out everything on all of his full breakdown over on SI. He said Jordan Love was his player of the day. He said, quote, "He never looked rattled. Aside from the receiver screen turn interception, Love kept the football out of harm's way. He threw 3 pinpoint perfect passes on deep shots and even threw a no-look completion to Romeo Doubs." And this is what I have been echoing day after day after day after day. Jordan's process has been awesome. And again, we had a snafu today where we saw him, not make the right read pre-snap, and it resulted in what's really a catastrophic play in a game situation, right? You are, I don't know if it was 1st and goal, 4th and goal, or anything in between, but you're on the 3-yard line and you're ready to go in and get a touchdown. And at minimum, you're going to get 3 points. And instead, you throw a quick throw to the outside and it's pick 6 the other way. That is a massive swing that will almost always result in a loss, because you're taking 7 off the board for you and giving 7 to them. You're not going to survive many 14-point swings in the NFL, not with a young, inexperienced team, right? So that's a catastrophic play. But he has that, and again, it's a pre-snap process. But overall, his process has been fantastic. He knows where to go with his reads. He knows his checkdowns, and this is another day of that. Some of the inaccuracies remain there, and some of the not being in the same rhythm with his wide receivers remains there. But again, per Bill Huber, his player of the day, Jordan Love. And I think that's a great sign for him moving forward. And a lot of the Bengals players were very complimentary of Jordan Love on the day as well. I will note that drops are becoming a bit of an issue. It sounded like Christian Watson might have had a drop. Romeo had a big drop down the field. Jaden Reed had a couple drops. So, we talk about Jordan Love being 17 of 29. You add in, 4 more completions that were drops, and now he's 21 of 29, probably with, 3 or 4 touchdowns and an interception. That sounds a heck of a lot different. But again, that goes with the inconsistencies of a young offense. Anders Carlson, meanwhile, I feel like Anders and Jordan are sort of tied at the hip of the days that they have of some really good stuff, like an amazing 58-yarder, 60-yarder here and there with plenty of leg, but then a missed extra point. He was 7 of 10 on the day. Speaking of which, he missed an extra point, then hit 7 field goals in a row, but then he missed his final 2, including the potential game-winning field goal in the 2-minute drill. But those were a miss from 56 yards out and a miss from, I saw anywhere from 58 to 60 based on different writers. But and it sounds like the wind was against him as well. And on that 58 to 60 yarder, it sounds like it was right on the money. just a little bit short. And again, he was going in the wind, and that's a really long kick. He certainly has the leg to get it there. I'm sure he was focused on his accuracy a little bit on the play too, but 7 of 10 on the day, missed extra point, 7 makes in a row, missed 56, missed somewhere between 58 and 60 on that last one to win the game. Meanwhile, Alex Magoo apparently had a really nice deep ball to Malik Heath on the day for a big touchdown. And by all accounts, the Packers defense was beyond dominant. Now, no Joe Burrow. T. Higgins was limited, but they didn't have Jair Alexander for the Packers on defense either. Again, he didn't play team drills, which just tells me he's not going to play in the preseason game, and they're getting everyone else ready who's actually going to play in the game. And again, Jair doesn't need those reps. So we're good there, but defense was dominant for Green Bay from all accounts, and that's a great thing to see, and that's what you want to see with Joe Burrow being out, but still, we'll certainly take the wins where we can get them from a Packers defensive point of view. Does sound like Jordan Love will play 2 series on Friday, so keep an eye out for that. And again, I just want to give a huge shout out to Wes Hod, Bill Huber, Matt Schneidman, the Bengals beat writers, Rob Demovsky, Ryan Wood, all those guys for doing such an amazing job of covering practice on Wednesday. Make sure to go and check out all of their work. Last thing I wanted to go over today, I didn't get a chance to go over it yesterday, but that first of all, that's going to do it for my practice notes. But the Packers did release their unofficial or their official, unofficial, whatever it is, depth chart on Tuesday. Take the entire depth chart and basically throw it out the window for the most part and take it with an extreme grain of salt. They just throw it together. It's not anything that a ton of thought is put into, and I guarantee you Matt has zero care whatsoever for what's on that depth chart. But some notes that I will put out there nonetheless. It was interesting to see Bo Melton as wide receiver 6. I would personally put Malik Heath a little bit ahead of him at this point. I think Heath is ahead of Melton, but he was on the second line, and Heath and Dubose were on the third line. So to me, that says Bo Melton wide receiver 6. Rasheed Walker was ahead of Caleb Jones. That was an interesting one. I would say based on practice, Caleb Jones has been a little bit more ahead of Rasheed Walker, but an interesting note there. Maybe the most interesting note, Josiah DeGuara listed as a fullback, not a tight end. He's still listed as a tight end on the roster, works with the fullbacks in the individual drills. That's more of an interesting one, and I think is going to tell you how I would almost label DeGuara now, and I agree with the listing here. I think he's fullback, H-back. I don't know how much they really plan on using him as like a true legitimate tight end. I think you're going to see a lot more of Musgrave, Tyler Davis, and Tucker Kraft as the true tight ends, with maybe a smattering of DeGuara at tight end, but mostly DeGuara in the backfield as an H-back fullback. I'm going to talk more about DeGuara. Maybe we'll wait till next week, but I want to talk more about him coming up as well. Rudy Ford was listed as the starter ahead of Owens and Moore, and this just goes to show you some of this stuff is probably already outdated. We've seen, Jonathan Owens line up with the ones over the last, 3-4 practice, 4-5 practice, whatever it's been. So Rudy Ford's listed on there though, but all 3 of those guys certainly in the conversation, along with Tavarius Moore. Patrick Taylor listed as running back 3. Zach Tom and Josh Myers were the starters on the offensive line, with Yash being the backup left tackle. Some questions that people posted when I posted my takeaways from the schedule over on Twitter. People were wondering why Eric Stokes was not listed on the depth chart. Of course, that is because he is on the PUP list and not yet active. Once he is off the PUP list and active, he will go on the depth chart as well. People were also commenting of like, wow, Kenny Clark's listed as defensive end and TJ Slayton's at nose tackle. That's an interesting takeaway as well. Maybe, but this team is going to live 80% of the time in 2 defensive line looks. And they're going to be a lot of Kenny Clark and TJ Slayton, Kenny Clark and Devontae Wyatt and TJ Slayton. Like, they're going to rotate those guys, but it's going to be a ton of 2 defensive line sets. Meanwhile, yes, if they are in a 3-4, I think you will see Slayton at the nose and Kenny at the defensive end spot. I think you're also going to see times where Kenny's at the nose and Slayton's at the defensive end spot. So I wouldn't read too much into that. Musgrave at tight end 1. I saw some people pointing out that Musgrave's been tight end 1 since the first day of OTAs and mini camps. He's been tight end 1 since then. He's been tight end since day 1 of training camp. He's been tight end 1 every single day of the offseason since he's gotten here. So not a surprise there. He is going to be tight end number 1 for this team. They listed Samori Toure over Jaden Reed, as I mentioned, from practice on Wednesday. Sounds like Reed has been taking, or at least on this day, took more snaps than Samori Toure, so that's going to be probably pretty interchangeable. I saw people commenting on Tyler Davis over Tucker Kraft. Tyler Davis has been better than Tucker Kraft so far. I know people are being like, oh my God, what are they doing? They don't know what they're doing. Like Tucker Kraft's going to play a good chunk of snaps. So Tyler Davis has been pretty darn good, especially as a blocker so far. I think they have big plans for Tyler Davis on the season, and Tucker Kraft's going to get plenty of playing time as a rookie. And then I saw a lot of people commenting on Kingsley J.J. at edge rusher number 5. Not surprising here either. Preston and Gary on the first line. You had Hollins, who's been with the ones a ton so far this offseason, and Van Ness on the 2 line, and then Enigbare on the 3. Not surprising there, and it's just a great sign that they've got 5 guys like that, and Enigbare is at the number 5 spot. We'll see what happens with Justin Hollins. I'm not totally convinced yet that he ends up on the roster, but he has been practicing a ton with the 1, so that wasn't super surprising to see Enigbare on the 3 line. That does it for all of my news and notes today. Again, shout out to all the people that were at practice on Wednesday. So we had all of these great news and notes to discuss and go over. Be right back here tomorrow. We are going to be previewing a preseason game. It feels surreal, but it's finally here. Can't wait to talk to you guys about that. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Tell your friends. Subscribe over on the audio podcast as well. If you're not checking that out, we do 2 episodes every single day now. You're going to get me over there, but you're also going to get our awesome team of about 20 people, including, I don't even want to go over because I'm going to miss people, but Andrew Murtag, Kyle Fellows, Dusty Evely, Maggie Loney, Perry Goldstein, Mark Eckel, Jason Perrone, Steve Perhatch, Sarah Kelleher, just so many incredible people. Janelle Mackey, Matt Freilich. I hate doing this because I always forget people. Jacob Morley, Jacob Westendorf, just a ton of amazing people. So go check that out. And Jimmy Christensen. Sorry, I don't want to miss anyone, but everyone's absolutely amazing. So check out the audio version as well. Enough about that. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Till next time. And as always, go Pack Go.